Most of my childhood memories are blurry, but one thing I remember clearly: my father was always away on business. Whenever I asked Mom where he'd gone, she'd always say, "He's on a work trip, he's busy. He'll be back next month." But that next month kept getting pushed further and further. Eventually, I got used to it being just me and Mom, just the two of us at dinner, just her tucking me in at night, just her clapping from the audience at my school performances. Dad did come back occasionally, but never for long. He always seemed in a rush, like he couldn't wait to leave again. Sometimes he'd hug me, but more often he argued with Mom as time went on. Even those brief visits became rarer. Then George came along. I first met him the summer I turned 7. Our kitchen pipes had sprung a leak, and when I came home from school, I found a man crouched under the sink, tools scattered around him. Mom seemed unusually cheerful. She'd even baked a blueberry pie and told me it was for George, just a little snack while he works. I remember George smelled faintly of cigars. His voice was low and calm, the kind of voice that made you feel safe without knowing why. That evening, he sat next to me and helped me with a puzzle. At one point, Mom came out with drinks, and when their eyes met, something about it made me uncomfortable. Children can't always explain their instincts, but they know when something shifts. From that day on, George became a regular presence. He mowed the lawn, fixed the roof, even built a wooden bookshelf for me in the garage. When I asked Mom if he was family, she'd always smile and say, "He's just a kind friend helping us out." But when I was 10, I saw Mom and George hugging in the kitchen. The way they leaned into each other, the way he wiped a smudge of sauce from her face, the way she held his hand, it wasn't how friends acted. That was when I started hating George being around. I'd slam my door when he came over, skip meals, avoid him completely. Mom noticed. She tried to talk to me, to soothe me. "He's good to us," she said one night. "You should be grateful." I shot back coldly. "Dad is our family." "Not him," she sighed like she had no energy left. One time, she picked me up from school, and the drive was quiet. Then she said, "Not everything is the way it looks." I didn't answer. After that, things just got worse. I stopped eating dinner with her, stopped talking. If she asked about school, I gave one-word answers. If she tried to hug me, I pulled away. Sometimes, I'd find her sitting in the dim light of the kitchen, head in her hands. At night, I'd hear her crying in the bathroom. But come morning, she'd still smile and make my lunch like nothing happened. George started keeping his distance too. His car only showed up after I left for school, and it was gone again before I got home. When I was 14, Mom tripped and fell one day. I rushed to help her, but she shoved me away, tears streaming down her face. "You hate me, don't you?" she shouted. "Fine, I'll stop trying." "Is that what you want?" I froze. For the first time, I didn't see my strong, smiling mother. I saw someone fragile, breaking apart. That night, I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned, trying to name a feeling I didn't understand. Maybe, just maybe, I was starting to see her loneliness. But I still couldn't forgive. At 16, I got accepted into a boarding program out of state and left home. She didn't try to stop me. All she said was, "Take care of yourself." I got on the bus without looking back. For the next 10 years, I never went home for Christmas, never called on Mother's Day. I moved to New York College, work, relationships, living a life that had nothing to do with where I came from. I buried my childhood like an old photo album locked in a drawer. But I always knew the truth, even if I never admitted it out loud. I didn't really hate my mother. I didn't hate George. I hated the selfish, scared version of myself. The one who feared being replaced, the one who couldn't bear to share her love. That childish possessiveness ugly and silent trotted our bond and hurt her in ways I never meant to. And then, she started appearing in my dreams. She'd be in the kitchen of our old house, standing by the window, cutting fruit, slowly. Her fingers would bleed, but she wouldn't stop. I'd call out, but she never turned, just kept cutting, the blood dripping silently. Other times she sat by my childhood bed, holding Charlotte's Web, flipping the pages with unmoving lips. She never spoke. Her face was always unreadable. I'd wake with a wet pillow, and no idea why I was crying. Then one rainy evening, I came home soaked from work. As soon as I stepped into the hallway, I heard a familiar voice from the living room. "You haven't come home. I had to search everywhere to find out you moved here." I jumped. She was sitting on my couch, hair neatly combed, wearing that blue knit sweater she loved. "Mom," I blinked in disbelief. She frowned, annoyed. "You don't call. You don't visit. Are you tired of me already?" I felt oddly happy, but didn't hug her. Just tried to stay calm and walked into the kitchen. "I'll check the fridge. Are you hungry?" I said, opening the door. "Mom, what do you want to eat?" No answer. I stopped, turned to look. The living room was empty. The couch sat in silence. The lamp cast quiet shadows on the wall. Nothing. I stood frozen in front of the fridge, a cold sweat crawling down my spine. That voice, her sweater, the way she looked at me. How? Then my phone rang. I nearly dropped it. It was my cousin. She told me Mom had just passed away at the hospital. I couldn't speak. My whole body turned to ice. I rushed home for the funeral. The sky was grey, raining like it would never stop. Standing in front of her photo, my heart broke in two. She looked so thin, her face hollow, her skin drained of all warmth. White hair framed her sunken eyes, and her lips were pale and pressed into a line. No smile, no voice. I didn't know if she ever realized how much I missed her, or how afraid I was to face her. After the funeral, George found me. "Can we talk?" he asked gently. We sat in the same cafe next to our old house. He was quiet for a long time, then finally said, "Your mother always knew you hated her, but she never blamed you." I stared into my coffee cup as he continued. "Your father, he'd already started another family by the time she got pregnant. She knew everything, but she chose to keep you. She never told you the truth, because she wanted you to feel like you had a real family. Even if it wasn't." My eyes blurred. I whispered, "What about you and her?" George shook his head. "It wasn't what you thought. I loved her, yes, but she never promised me anything. Every part of her time, her heart she gave to you." I couldn't speak. My throat ached with grief. I thought about that day she came to my apartment. That blue sweater. The disappointment in her voice. Maybe that wasn't a dream. Maybe she really came just to see me one last time. And I missed the chance to hold her, to say what I should have said long ago. I whispered, "Mom, I'm sorry." At the very back of our basement, there was a small room. When I was little, I used to go down there to play. I would always talk to the door, not to myself, but to my mom. Dad told me that Mom had died in an accident when I was very young, but I later realized she never really left. She was just hiding. She told me she and Dad were playing hide and seek, and she couldn't let him find her. She said she couldn't come out, or Dad would get angry. She said she could only talk to me when he wasn't home. Sometimes she sang to me soft, warm songs, like a summer breeze at night. Back then, I never questioned why she was behind the door. I never saw her face. The door was never open. But I knew she was there. That was the only real warmth I had as a child. Then I started elementary school. I still ran down to the basement every day after school and knocked 5 times on the door. It was our secret code. But one day, she stopped responding. No matter how much I called, cried, begged, her voice never came back. After that day, I never heard her again. I cried for a long time, thinking she didn't want me anymore, but slowly, I began to understand. Maybe Dad was right. Maybe she really had died. Maybe it was all in my head. A few months later, we moved. That old house was never sold, never rented. It just sat there, empty, like a forgotten memory. Years passed. I became a father myself, with a family of my own. My son, Yosef, recently started talking to an invisible friend. He says this friend sings, tells stories, and plays hide and seek. That night, I couldn't sleep. What haunted me wasn't Yosef's behavior. It was that door from my childhood. Memories flooded back like a dam breaking. I remembered the door, Mom's songs, and her voice saying, "Dad hasn't found me yet." I drove back to that old house. The door was just the same rusted handle, creaky hinges. I went down into the basement. The musty smell hit me like a wave. Nothing had changed. The small room's door still stood there, silent as ever. I stepped forward and knocked 5 times. No response. I let out a bitter laugh and turned away. 30 years later, and I still believed in fairy tales. "Arthur, is that you?" The voice made me freeze. I spun around. "Mom," her voice trembled behind the door. "I thought you'd never come back." Cold sweat broke down my spine. I knew that voice was hers. But I also knew it might not be human. If she was still alive, it didn't make sense. But I couldn't leave. I had to know the truth. I tried to open the door. It was locked. I ran upstairs, grabbed my toolbox from the car, pulled out a heavy axe, and swung it at the wood. Splinters flew. Finally, the old door gave way. I stood frozen. Inside was a dried-up, skeletal woman. Her hair was matted and dusty, her nails like claws, pale skin stretched over bones. The room was tiny, just a bed and a blanket of torn cloth. A bowl of rotting food sat on the floor, the air thick with the stench of urine, blood, and decay. She looked up at me, her lips trembling. "You really came," I thought. "You'd forgotten me." I stumbled back, almost screaming, but then she spoke again. It was my mother's voice. Not a ghost, not a hallucination. Her. I rushed forward and held her, touched her shaking face. She was warm, alive. "Get me out of here, Arthur. If we wait any longer, the demon will come back." I carried her out of the basement and into the back seat. She slumped against the car seat, her voice barely audible. "I did something wrong. After I had you, I cheated. Your father found out." I sped through the storm toward the hospital. Her words echoed inside the car. She told me the whole truth. After I was born, she fell in love with someone else. Dad changed when he found out. He beat her unconscious, dragged her into that tiny room in the basement, unlocked her in. She was in there for over 30 years. When I was still a baby, he used to bring me down to nurse. As I got older, he stopped letting me see her. She was left alone in the dark. No one else knew. He even faked her funeral. She was imprisoned, tortured, abandoned. And I had spent my whole life thinking she was a ghost, my eyes blurred with tears. The songs, the laughter, the warmth, they were all real. "Why didn't you tell me to call the police?" I asked hoarsely. She said she waited for me. She thought I'd grow up and come rescue her. But when Dad found out we were communicating, he gagged her, tied her up, and made sure she could never make another sound. Then he moved us to a new place and left her there. That night, I got her to the hospital. And I called the police. My father was arrested quickly. During the trial, he didn't deny anything. He said it was what he deserved. When the court sentenced him, I stood on the witness stand, choking on pain, looking at the man. I couldn't decide if I hated or feared. I visited my mom every day in the hospital. She stayed there for a long time. The doctors said it was a miracle she survived all those years, barely eating, living off a fragile will to stay alive. When she slept, I held her bony hand, my heart in shreds. I used to think she was a ghost, just my childhood imagination, but she was real, trapped in memory, forgotten in a room no light ever reached. Sometimes she'd hum softly, sometimes she'd just sit and look at me. We never spoke of that door again. Do you remember that song? She asked. I nodded, eyes filled with tears. That childhood melody drifted again in the quiet of the hospital room. I held her hand tightly and whispered, I'm sorry I came too late. She smiled faintly and said, You came, that's enough.